Come on, guys, stand up here. All right, they're a little timid, I think. Okay. We also honor tonight the survivors who had the courage to share their stories, and by doing so, give what we would call a human face to the Holocaust. We want to recognize our past speakers this evening, Leah Weems and Ruth Steinfeld, Walter Case, Leon Cooper, Helen Colin, Wolf Finkelman, Al Marks, Bill Morgan, and Rudy Baum. And also want to recognize Larry Steinfeld, who coordinates our tours to the museum. And we are having a tour on December 10. If any of you would want to join our class and make that tour, please contact us and let us know. And I do know we have a few survivors here with us tonight. If you're a survivor, would you please stand so we can honor you and recognize you? Bill, you guys, stand up, Bill. Bill Morgan, stand up. Great. We're so glad to have each of you with us this evening. You'll notice that in your program we did not have an admission fee for your being here this evening. This is our gift to the Jewish community, but you might notice there is an envelope in your program. And if you think this is an important kind of gathering for Jews and Christians to come together and say never again to anti-Semitism and speak out vocally on behalf of the people of Israel, we would be most grateful for whatever financial assistance you would like to share with us tonight. For many years, Peggy and I have had the honor and privilege to speak for Israel and the Jewish people with a message that Jews and Christians must stand together in these challenging times. We've not given our lives to this cause because it's understood, or because it's even accepted or popular, or because it's wanted. But we do so because it's the right thing to do. We believe it's, well, that's good. All right, thank you. We believe it's better to live together with love, respect, and friendship than hate, intolerance, and isolation. If you agree with that, could you give a hand clap? We all know we have a tragic history, and the tragedy is on the bad side for the Christian people. We know we, as Christians, need to repent for the tragic history that we have with the Jewish people. But I do want to say that we're living in a new season where like-minded Christians and like-minded Jews are discovering one another. Whenever there's a paradigm shift between people groups, there's always a natural and understandable caution as those who have been alienated for so long seek to become friends. And speaking on behalf of millions of Christians around the world and thousands in the Houston area, I want to say to our Jewish friends tonight, you are not alone. While you may not fully yet realize it and understand it, it takes time. Bible-believing Christians are your best friends. We will never forsake you, and neither will your covenant God. Can all the Christians say amen? In the challenging days ahead, I want our Jewish friends to understand that we stand with you unwavering. We consider any attack against you as against us as well. We will weep with you in difficult times. We will rejoice with you in good times. Our love is unconditional. Our only agenda is the privilege and honor to serve, and we ask nothing in return but that blessing. We believe it's time for like-minded Jews and Christians to rise above our tragic history and embrace one another. There are many reasons why Jews and Christians need to be friends. One that stands out so clearly is that we have a common enemy. You don't have to be even in Israel today now to hear the Islamic jihadists cry, today we fight the Saturday people and tomorrow the Sunday people. And throughout history, whenever this evil has been allowed to have its way, it never stops with the Jewish people. it always then goes to the Christian people. We have a common enemy who hates us, wants to destroy us and our way of life. They're not going to be successful at that, but along the way, they will do everything they can to fulfill their goals, and this is why Jews and Christians need each other for such a time as this. This is not a time to live in fear and despair. It's a time to live in faith and hope. Soon we will see the Almighty reveal His plan for the final solution to the anti-Semite problem. And when the Almighty has destroyed all the anti-Semites of this world, and He is going to, the Israeli flag will still be flying high over Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of Eretz Israel. If you agree with that, can you respond, please? We have many challenges with Jews and Christians trying to talk to each other, challenges of communication and sensitivity and respect. There's so many barriers we have to overcome. We must not let these challenges deter us, because the consequences, hear it clearly, of remaining isolated from each other are much greater than the risk of standing together. So that's my introduction, and we want to move on into the program this evening. On October 1938, the Nazis, this is all in your program, most of it, expelled thousands of Polish Jews who were living in Germany. However, Poland did not accept them, so the people were stranded in a no-man's land. They were barely surviving under the harshest of conditions in a Polish camp. Most of you know the story. A 17-year-old German-born Polish Jew was in Paris at the time and learned about his parents being in the camp. Understandably so, he became very angry. He went to the German embassy in Paris with the intent of killing the German ambassador. But instead of killing the ambassador, he shot Ernst von Roth, who was the third secretary to the ambassador. As we know, this was on November 7, 1938, and 2 days later the ambassador died, the secretary died on November 9. The Nazis were waiting for such an incident to justify their actions of hate against the Jewish people. Hitler gave his stormtroopers a free hand against the Jews. And when von Roth died on November 9, they went on a rampage of terror and destruction. Approximately 250 synagogues were set on fire. These are conservative figures. 815 shops were destroyed. Several hundred houses destroyed. 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and sent to what was then called concentration camps. This action against the Jewish people, as we know, came to be known as Kristallnacht, meaning the night of broken glass. The streets were filled with broken glass from the shops and the synagogues, which the Nazis destroyed. For many, this tragic event is only a footnote in history. But it's not for a footnote for the people who stood a while ago and all of those who lived through it. And it should not be a footnote for us as well. As you've heard the phrase, I'm sure, people who don't know history are bound to repeat it. Those of us who are Christians and may not be as familiar with the history need this understanding so we can stand with our Jewish friends and say, never again. And this is why we're having this special evening tonight. At this time, we want to light the candles on the IHCS Wall of Remembrance. This Wall of Remembrance has very significant place names carved on it. You're more than welcome to look at it later after the meeting if you'd like, both in Hebrew and in English. After going to Ulpan, I can now read the Hebrew and know what's on there, along with the Star of David and a place for lighting a candle. The Nazis had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of death camps. And of course, we couldn't put all their names here, but these are just representative of the many. And so our candle lighters, assistants are going to come and take their place now and help us. And at this time, we're asked Susan Lannis-Meyer. Susan is doing such a fantastic job as Executive Director of Holocaust Museum Houston and Peggy Booker to come and light these candles. As they light the candles, I'm going to read just a few place names from this wall of remembrance. Peggy and I were honored to participate with the museum that the Survivors Association helped Peggy and I go on that tour, and it was such an incredible trip. Every human being needs to go on that trip, but particularly Christians who need to understand why it's important that we stand with the Jewish people. I've been teaching on these things for many years, but what a privilege it was to go and be part of that tour, Peggy and I, and see these places for ourselves. So as Susan and Peggy come now, I'm going to read just a few of the places that are here. And Auschwitz, located in Poland, probably the most well-known, began to function in June 1940, the greatest killing camp during the Holocaust. This is where Dr. Joseph Mengele performed his medical experiments. Before the camp was overrun by the Soviet Army on January 27, 1945, more than 1 million, you say that with me, more than 1 million men, women, and children were murdered inside its gates. Buchenwald is listed here, was established in July 1937. It's located near the German city of Weimar. It's just a few minutes bus ride outside of Weimar. One of the largest concentration camps on German soil, with 130 satellite camps. It's hard to grasp the magnitude at Buchenwald. Approximately 250,000 prisoners were at Buchenwald. Over 50,000 were murdered. Buchenwald was liberated by the American soldiers on April 11, 1945. Another camp listed here on the wall is Majdanek, located in Poland. This camp is so scary because it's so well preserved. It looks like they could start it back up any minute. The camp received its first prisoners in October 1941. Majdanek was a camp of immediate destruction. Nearly 500,000 prisoners from 28 countries and 54 nationalities passed through its gates. It's estimated that about 360,000 people perished at Majdanek before it was liquidated by the Nazis in advance of the Soviet Army in July 1944. I want to read one more to you, then we'll move on. Treblinka. I think of all the camps that we saw, that one really gripped our heart more than any of them because of its setting and location. About an hour and a half drive from Warsaw, deep in the forest where Hitler wanted to hide his hideous crimes. Treblinka was built in 1942, primarily to murder the Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto. It was strictly a killing camp. In 18 months at Treblinka, the Nazis murdered over 800,000 Jewish people in 18 months. Now, in the 2 hours that it will take to have our meeting this evening, human beings stepped off the train and became ashes in 2 hours. There was no crematorium at Treblinka. Once the people were gassed, their bodies were burned in large pits and their ashes scattered to the winds. In 1943, a few prisoners managed to escape Treblinka and tell what was happening. Fearing exposure to their hideous crimes, the Nazis mass murdered the remaining prisoners, burned their bodies, dug up those buried, and burned them again. They reburied what was left of their bones and ashes and completely destroyed the camp. Today, all of Treblinka is a mass burial ground. Years later, a memorial was built at Treblinka with 17,000 stones placed on the grounds to honor the dead. But if you didn't know what happened there and those stones were not there, you would never know anything ever took place there. It's just an open field out in the middle of the forest. But every time the wind blows, the ashes of those precious people blow around that field. and we were honored to be there and say Kaddish that year when we were at Treblinka. And then one more quickly, Sobibor is mentioned here. Our speaker is from Sobibor, so I'm going to reserve that camp experience for our speaker. We are so honored to have him. Peggy's going to come now and introduce our guest speaker.
I just would like to say, while I have an opportunity to greet you corporately, that indeed what a joy, what an honor, and what a blessing it is to have each one of you here with us tonight. I know people live all over the city, and there was rain, and for some of you, you may not have known how to get here for sure, but you're here, and we are so glad you are. It is such an honor to have this meeting. I'd like to publicly thank Associate Pastor Jack Pigeon Jr. for y'all allowing us to use this facility. So thank you again, Jack, so very much. And I'm not going to say a whole lot about Philip because he's going to be coming and sharing his story with you. But I would just like to say I had the joy and the privilege of meeting him 2 years ago when I was in Yad Vashem in Israel. And I think it was one of those what I call a God incident, where in all of those thousands of people that were wandering through, and this was the new edition of the Holocaust Museum, one of the young people who was on our tour met him, brought him over for me to meet, and we have several times when he's been staying with us since yesterday, we said, who would have thought that chance meeting, chance, meeting, that he would now be with us tonight. So Philip is from New York now. He has a lovely family that he's told us about. And since immigrating to the U.S. from a young man, he has testified at a lot of the war crimes that have been going on over the years, and also served as a consultant for the movie that many of you have seen called Escape from Sobibor. He is a sought-out speaker. I do feel honored that we have him with us this evening. And just one more comment. The leader of the revolt at Sobibor, and again, Philip will tell you all of this story. His name was Alexander Pechersky. And just before the revolt started, Pechersky said, those of you who survive, bear witness and let the world know what happened. And Philip is here with us this evening to bear witness. So would you join me in welcoming Philip Bialowitz?
Thank you, Peggy, for your gracious introduction. Shalom. Good evening. I am extremely grateful to Dr. Richard Booker and his lovely wife, Peggy, who on behalf of the Institute of the Hebraic Christian Studies have invited me to address this distinguished gathering on a topic that holds so much emotion for me personally and so much importance for the world today. Tonight is the anniversary of the Kristallnacht, the night of violence when the government of Nazi Germany ordered deadly attacks upon Jews. These attacks claimed the first hundreds of victims of the Holocaust. And these attacks were carried out by not only Hitler's men, but in many cases, ordinary Germans. In this way, the glass that shattered all over Germany on Kristallnacht was symbolic of a world that was also broken into pieces. A world where many people watched and did nothing while innocent people were being murdered all around them. A world where not only glass needed to be repaired, but the entire system, starting with the governments of the world, all over the way down to the hearts of ordinary people. Unfortunately, our work of fixing the world continues even after the Holocaust. And that is why it's so important that we are all here together tonight, no matter what our religion, to show that we are all part of the solution. We all believe that we need to improve the world. We all hear the commandments from the Old Testament, justice, justice shall you pursue. We all seek to act in ways that bring redemption into the world. The Jewish tradition teaches that the world is sustained by the bread of school children. That is why even the war came to my small town and the Germans prohibited the public schooling of Jews, my parents made sure that I received lessons from a private tutor. As I look around this room, I am grateful to see the faces of so many young people participating in this memorial. Among the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust, there were 1.5 million children. No child should ever have to experience the suffering that I endured or I endured. That is the main reason I traveled from New York to be here tonight. I hope that my story will serve both as a warning and an inspiration to all of you. I hope that after hearing my story, everyone here, but especially the children, will be inspired to do all that you can do, prevent other children from suffering anywhere in the world at any time. The events I shall now recount for you are so horrifying that at times they will seem unbelievable, a fiction of the mind. But this is no fiction. The happenings are as real as I am before you. For I was a witness to this tragedy. Most people only dream their nightmares. However, I and my fellow survivors actually lived this experience. We suffered endless cruelty during the Holocaust. But in all places that we suffered, we also fought hard for our dignity in our lives. We fought in many places, including the forests, the camps, and especially the Warsaw Ghetto. I am one of the few living survivors of one of these places, the infamous Sobibor death camp, where 250,000 Jews were murdered. Along with Treblinka in Belgrade, Sobibor was one of the 3 death camps built by the Nazis in the deep forests of Eastern Europe, Poland. Despite the fact that so many tens of thousands of people were killed at Sobibor, in no camps did we fight more successfully than there. The mass prisoner uprising at Sobibor was a unique and humiliating defeat that the Nazis suffered at the hands of untrained, ill-fed, and virtually unarmed Jews. The stories of the tens of thousands of Jews who died at Sobibor and the few that lived are stories of both suffering and triumph. I will now share with you the story of the torment I experienced at the hands of the Germans after coming to Sobibor. Then I will also share with you the story of how I, along with my brother and our fellow prisoners, regained our freedom and dignity from the Germans. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell it as I know it really was, as I lived it, and as I survived it. I came from a large family, but by the time I was 14, I was an orphan, and my childhood was lost forever. My mother had been shot by a German firing squad. My father, as well as one of my sisters, had both been gassed in Sobibor. I myself had already escaped certain deaths several times in my small Polish town named Izbica. On one occasion, I had even been put in front of a firing squad with dozens of other Jews from my town. As soon as the soldiers started shooting, I fell to the ground. Dead and dying people fell on top of me. I found a space to breathe, and I played dead. The soldiers chose not to cover the mass grave because it was night, and they wanted to look for some valuables in the morning. Several hours later, I climbed out of the grave to safety and returned to my family covered in other people's blood. Soon after the Warsaw Ghetto uprising started in April 1943, the Germans rounded up all the remaining Jews in the Polish ghettos, including the ghetto in my town. My brother, my two sisters, my 7-year-old niece, and I had been hiding in a cold basement, but we were found by the local Polish collaborators. The Germans put us all on trucks and brought us to Sobibor. Before beginning to describe to you what I found when I arrived at Sobibor, I must explain an important point. In concentration camps such as Dachau, in Auschwitz, there was still, with selection, a chance to live and survive. However, Sobibor was a pure extermination camp. 99.9% of the Jews who entered Sobibor were sent to the gas chamber immediately. They were almost all like me, extremely weak, both physically and mentally, after years of life in hard labor in a ghetto. In this reduced state, the few of us could offer resistance. I remember that the moment I arrived at Sobibor, part of me thought, after going through all the terrible experiences in the ghetto, at least if they kill me, it will be my end and I can have some peace. But at the same time, I was only a teenager and I wanted to live. As I turned out, I was one of the very few who got lucky. At Sobibor, the Germans maintained only a small group of about 600 slave laborers at all times. These were the 0.1% of Jews who had a temporary opportunity to live. When their ranks were diminished due to suicides, exhaustion, and reprisal for attempted escape, the Germans replenished these workers from new transports. The day before my arrival at Sobibor, the Germans killed 40 Jewish slave laborers at the camp. Perhaps the victims had been planning an escape. No, the Germans needed people to replace the slaves they had killed. When the Germans asked us if there were any tradespeople, professionals among us, my brother raised his hands because he was a pharmacist, and they picked him out. Then he told the Germans that I was his assistant. And thus my brother gave me my first chance at life at Sobibor. If he had not succeeded in convincing the Germans to allow me to remain with him, then I would have been sent to the gas chambers along with almost everyone else we came with, including my niece and two sisters. With tears in our eyes, my brothers and I said goodbye to our relatives for the last time. Even my 7-year-old niece knew that she was going to die when she came to me to hug me. When I arrived at the work section of the camp, I could barely see through the dense fog that surrounded me. This fog was unlike any I ever encountered. It smelled like human flesh. I understood that it was the smoke and ashes of all the people in my transport, including my family. A fellow prisoner asked me if I had come with anyone beside my brother. I told him I came with two sisters and a niece. Then he said, "It is very difficult for me to explain what is going on here, but this is a death camp. The big flames and the fog all around us. That is what is happening to every transport that arrives here. The next day, my brother Simcha told me that he found a neighbor from our hometown working at the camp. The neighbor told my brother that he had cut the hair of our sister before she went to the gas chamber. Our neighbor said that our sister recognized him and asked him how long will the gas take to kill us. He was not allowed to say anything to her. My sister's fear in her suffering were more than I could bear. And I said, if my grief was not already intense enough, soon I too was put to work cutting women's hair on their way to the gas chambers. Cutting hair was only one of my tasks I was forced to do. Another job was helping victims of the trains on their way to the gas chambers. Based on what I saw all of my jobs, I can answer your questions. Why didn't they fight back? In order to focus your imagination on the working of the crime, to show the deception, to help you understand how millions were killed in camps so easily, I will describe a typical transport of 2,500 Dutch Jews from the moment of their arrival at Sobibor. The Dutch Jews arrived on passenger trains with most of their belongings. The Germans had tricked the Dutch Jews into thinking that they were being resettled in a war camp. Because they were not aware of the fate that was befall them, they offered none of the resistance that many of the Polish Jews offered. The deceptive procedure I shall now explain to you was only practiced upon the 35,000 Dutch Jews who were escaped, who were guests at Sobibor. They arrived at a neat and colorful village in the middle of a deep forest. But what they saw from the train window, the flowers, the trees, the grass, the nicely paved road, were there only to give an illusion, and it worked. Why should they suspect it wasn't a resettlement or work camp? German officers stood casually waiting at the platform. Pleasant waltz music played over the loudspeaker. On order, a group of neatly uniformed Jewish prisoners in blue overalls opened the wagon doors. I was one of them. Our sole job was to help the newcomers with their heavy baggage. When these Dutch Jewish passengers arrived, they would offer me a tip for my services. My heart was bleeding because I knew the horrible truth that they did not know. I knew that in a half hour they were going to be ashes. The passengers were tired, but nevertheless glad that their long journey was over. Being met by young, healthy boys like me in a clean station must have seemed to them like a sign of good things to come. So as not to hamper the smoothness of the operation, the Germans led the very old, disabled, and the sick to the side and told them to wait. Leaving their heavy luggage behind, a column of men and women carrying babies with children close behind moved quickly through a barbed wire alley towards a big, long barracks. Passing the length of the barracks, they were ordered to leave their purses and small land baggage. Here they must have become a little suspicious. Their private papers, money, jewelry, the medicine, etc. were inside, and they were hesitating to part with their important and precious articles. When polite explanation failed to bring results, they were beaten by the Germans. Meanwhile, the Jews were being led to a party-covered yard. Here they were to experience the height in satanic deception. Standing on a porch of a house, a German in a quiet and convincing voice welcomed the victims. He sympathetically apologized for the inconvenience in travel and for the fact that they could not go immediately to their quarters to relax. First, for sanitary reasons, they must take a shower and be disinfected. Now he strongly recommended that they pick up their waiting postcards and write home to their loved ones on Holland, assuring them of their health and resettlements in a decent place. The soothing speech by the polite assessment had its effect. There was some hand clapping, and people rushed for the postcards. After the postcards were collected, a polite order was given to undress. When ready, they led from the undressing yard to a narrow barbed wire alley. At the entrance stood a kiosk where a German collected watches and jewelry from those who were passing by, giving them fictitious numbers received for pickup on return. No, they would have their hair shaved before walking towards the showers. Of course, these showers were actually the guest chambers. They were brutally and tightly packed into 12 by 12 cubicles. Probably then they sensed something wrong. But I am convinced that they did not fully realize the terrible truth until the first breath of poison gas. From a heavy engine housed in an adjoining track, the gas streamed in. Soon, throughout the camp, we heard the roar of a motor mixed with a horrible mass scream, at first loud and strong, then gradually subsiding. 15 minutes later, a contrasting silence took over. By this time, the next load of people were on their way to the yard for the same speech. During the 6 months that I spent in Sobibor, I experienced terrible things. I was beaten, I was whipped, I watched my family and friends perish. But one way that I found the strength to go on with life was through resisting the Nazis in a small ways. For example, one of my main job on the camp was in the storage room. Here I sifted through the belongings brought by the people on their way to the camp. My job was to look for valuables, such as jewelry, and turn over I found to a large safe. But I did not want to contribute to the German war machine. So I went to the outhouse whenever I could and threw away most of the jewels. Sometimes, when I found food, I would share it with my friends. One day, my friend Mordechai asked if I could give him a package of groceries. I gladly gave the food to Mordechai, but then I watched out the window as a German officer named Sergeant Frenzel caught my friend with the stolen food. As they began walking in the direction of the kiosk that I was working at, I ran to the outhouse to hide. Then I heard my name calling on the loudspeaker, and I thought it was the end of my life. I had no choice but to return and face the consequences. I found my co-workers standing in a group around Frenzel and Mordechai. My friend was shaking all over his body. Frenzel asked my friend, "Who gave you this to you?" My friend said that he took it himself. By saying this, my friend gave his life for me. Frenzel led him away. A half hour later, we were sorting through my friend's belongings, and he didn't sleep in my room anymore after that. I could not believe the heroism of my friend that day. I resolved to be grateful to him and to bless his memory for the rest of my life. Inhumanity of the Nazis knew no limits. One time, a transport of passengers arrived from the east in cattle cars. My job that day was to help the people down, but when we opened the doors, almost all the people were dead and swollen, and the few that were alive were mentally deranged. Apparently, they had tried to escape from the train and the Germans had subdued them with deadly fluoride gas. I could not bear the smell of the decaying bodies, and when I pulled the bodies off the train, their skin remained in my hands. In disbelief, I stood staring at a mother with their baby on the top of her, both dead. In that moment, I decided that I would prefer to die rather than continue with the work. So I lay down on the ground, hoping that the German would shoot me. At that moment, Sergeant Franzel came over to me and began beating me with his whip. And he caught a glimpse of the dead woman with a dead baby on top of her, and he said, "What beautiful scenery." He then took a photo. I still have nightmares about this episode. During the 6 months that I spent in Sobibor, I often thought about revenge and escape, but believed that it was impossible. Sobibor was a top secret camp surrounded by woods. If anyone managed to get past the barbed wire fence and dodge machine gun bullets, he then had to run through a field of landmines that separated the camp from the forest. Despite the odds, a seed of resistance grew among a small group of conspirators that including my brother and me. The conspiracy was led by a rabbi's son named Leon Feldhandler. From the very start, Leon decided that the escape must be planned not for a few prisoners, but for everyone in the entire camp. This was because any prisoner left behind would have suffered harsh reprisals. So our goal was to develop an escape plan for all 600 prisoners in the camp to leave no one behind. The main thing that we needed for such a bold plan was military know-how. But we were just Jews who had never fought before. Then a miracle occurred. In September of 1943, many Russian prisoners of war arrived at Sobibor, still wearing their Red Army uniforms. These POWs had been taken to Sobibor by the Germans because they were all Jewish soldiers in the Russian army. Because of the heavy workload in the connection with the mass transports, the Germans selected about 80 people from these newcomers to help us. This decision was deadly for the Germans. We were lacking people trained in the art of warfare. These Jewish POWs gave us exactly what we needed. People with military backgrounds. Their leader was a young lieutenant named Sasha Pichorsky. Leon, acting as a leader of our resistance cell, approached Sasha. Within a few weeks, they masterminded a prisoner revolt that would be carried out by 40 conspirators and me and my brother. We hoped the revolt would free every prisoner in Sobibor. A day before the uprising, my brother came to me with a compass and a bottle of cyanide. In case I would get injured of the mines, he told me to use the cyanide to die in peace, because people caught escaping in the past were burned alive by the Germans. In case I made it to the forest, he told me to use the compass to guide me towards our hometown in the east. The next day, our escape plan was carried out in 2 carefully planned phases. In the first phase, we secretly eliminated key Germans within 1 hour, without visible interrupting regular function of the camp. For this phase, we capitalized on the greed and punctuality of the German officers. I and 2 other teenage boys told individual German officers that we had found valuable items for them, such as leather coats and boots. We then made an appointment for them to go into the workshop to try on their coats and boots. Once inside, combat groups of 3 Jews used knives and axes to kill each officer. 11 assessmen were killed in this manner, and several Ukrainian guards were also killed. Telephone wires and electricity lines were cut so that the remaining Germans could not call for reinforcement. Phase 2 was the actual revolt and escape of not just conspirators, but each and every prisoner of Sobibor. At roll call, Sasha and Leon stood at a table at the front of the courtyard and announced to everyone, "Brothers, the moment of destiny has come. Most of the Germans have already been killed. Let us rise and destroy this place. We have little chance of surviving, but at least we will be fighting with honor. However, if by chance someone should live and escape, he should remember that it is his duty to be a witness and to tell the world about this place and what happened here." With stolen weapons in hand and the camp set on fire, all prisoners rushed towards the barbed wire fences and then towards the forest. When we were finally armed with a few pistols, machine guns, knives, and axes, we were no longer the powerless. We were shooting back, and the remaining Germans kept their distance. However, several Ukrainian guards manned the guard towers with their machine guns. According to plan, several conspirators called out to the Ukrainian guards, "The war is over, join us." We thought they would put down their weapons and join our revolt, but we were wrong. The Ukrainians machine gunned scores of us before a few of us silenced them with our own guns. Now everyone rushed for the barbed wire fences. As I climbed the barbed wire, my finger was sliced. The scar remained today. After getting past the fence, we still had to make it through to the minefields before reaching the forest. As the sound of bullets and exploding mines surrounded me, I guessed that it would be safer to run alongside some of the buildings erected by the Germans outside the camp. I believed that they would not place landmines there that would damage their living quarters. I was right. Along with about 300 other prisoners, I made it to the deep forest where I met up with my brother. We were the only two brothers to survive a Nazi extermination camp. 140 people were killed during the escape and 160 executed later. The escape from Sobibor was not the last chapter in anybody's journey to freedom. All of us still had to live for about 1 year as partisans and hiding until we were liberated by the Russian army. Life in the Polish countryside was so dangerous that just 48 of the 300 Jews who escaped survived to the end of the war. Many, including the co-leader of the revolt, Leon Feldhandler, were killed by their Polish neighbors. I owe my life to many people, but I owe my greatest debt to Sasha Pichorski and Leon Feldhandler. They were the masterminds of the unbelievable plot that gave us and 600 other people a second chance at life. These two heroes should go down in history as leaders of the same caliber as Yehuda Maccabee. In a time when it was difficult to gather the strength to go on living, Sasha and Leon inspired me and hundreds of others with a will to live, and they led us to freedom. With our faith in them and our faith in God, we fought like the old Maccabees of Israel. As I stand before you, I again recall the word that Sasha Pichorski used to inspire us just before the escape began. If someone should live and escape, he should remember that it is his duty to be a witness and to tell the world about this place and what happened here. Here I am, Sasha, a living witness to both a horror and a triumph of history that were both very real. I have dedicated my life to telling the story of the innocent people who perished in the middle of a forest hidden from the conscience of the world. And I also tell the story of those of you who survived thanks to Sasha and Leon. The courage of Sasha and Leon made it possible for me to become a proud father of 5 children and 13 grandchildren. My life and my legacy are everlasting victories over the Nazis. However, my survival means very little if Hitler's legacy of genocide lives on. At Sobibor, we fought for a better tomorrow, a better day, a better future, a better world without racism and world without genocide. I helped to destroy the Sobibor of Germans, but others have built new Sobibors. The systematic murder of innocent human beings continue around the world, even in the 21st century. In the Middle East, it is the 1930s again. The age-old practice of scapegoating continues. The people avoid responsibility for their own mistakes by blaming Jews in America for all their problems. The leaders of Iran are developing nuclear weapons for the same purpose that the gas chambers were developed in Nazi Germany. As peaceful people, and as human beings, we must condemn this type of evil in the same way that we condemn Hitler. Of course, we hope that our condemnation alone will stop hatred and genocide. But at Sobibor, we learned that condemnation is not always all that we need to stop genocidal murders. Sobibor stands forever as a warning of what happens when we allow barbarism to grow out of control. But Sobibor must also stand today and throughout the ages as a reminder of the power we all have within us to save our lives and the lives of our fellow human beings. This is the power of resistance, and we can only resist if we remain our hope and we maintain our hope for a better world. We cannot stop hoping even when it's so easy to be cynical or afraid. Even when new Kristallnachts are occurring every day with every new terrorist attack. It's up to each of us to be role models for the rest of the world and especially for our children. They are the future. We must show them that our approach to life is shaped by humanity's tradition of hope. Indeed, our approach to life is one of the only things that we can control in life. Perhaps this attitude is beautifully embodied by a rabbi in one of her favorite Jewish stories. The story is told of a middle-aged man named Chaim. As he was walking down the sidewalk one day, he encountered the rabbi who had taught him for years when he was a schoolboy. By now, the rabbi was a very old man, but nevertheless, they both recognized each other. The rabbi asked Chaim, "What have you done with your life?" Chaim answered, "I have a lovely wife, 2 beautiful children, and an excellent job." Then the rabbi asked Chaim, "What have you done with your life?" Now Chaim, thinking that the old rabbi must have lost some of his hearing ability, gave the same answer but in a louder voice. "I have a lovely wife, 2 beautiful children, and an excellent job." The rabbi then said, "Chaim, I heard you the first time. The reason I ask you the question again is because you did not answer my question. When I asked what you had done with your life, you told me what God had done with your life. Now tell me what you have done. Have you continued to learn and to grow and to improve yourself and the world around you? And to this I would add, have you thus continued to embody the hope and spirit of the people who fought at Sobibor for a better future?" Thank you and God bless you.
you take a seat, please? Thank you so much, Philip. As I've shared many times, our survivor friends are not getting younger. And when we started 10 years ago, there were more survivors here in Houston than there are now. And one day their time on this planet will be gone. But we have said every year to you, our survivor friends, that when your time is gone, we will tell your stories for you. They will never be forgotten. So, Philip, thank you so very much. Such a joy to have you this evening. Now, every year, we make a small little financial presentation to Holocaust Museum Houston in the name of our speaker. And I'm going to ask Peter Berkowitz, who is chairman of the board of Holocaust Museum Houston. Peter, would you come, please? And we want to just make a small financial gift to the museum of $1,000 in honor of Philip's family and the people who perished at Sobibor. Would you say a few words?
Thank you, Richard. Philip, thank you very much for sharing your story with all of us. We at Holocaust Museum Houston are proud to tell the world that we are here. We are here because of our survivors. It is our wonderful survivors who had the foresight to make our museum a place where we can teach the consequences that were so terribly learned from the Holocaust, the consequences of bigotry, hatred, and apathy. And as you so aptly said, unfortunately, too many people stood by and watched what happened. And we're here tonight, all of us, to say that we will not let this happen again, no matter who it happens to. It happened to the Jews during the Holocaust, but it happens to others each and every other day. So I am reminded of the story of the Danish who helped save the Jews during World War II. And at that time, they said that when they stood up for the Jews, they learned they could stand up for themselves. And as you said earlier, Richard, we must all stand together or we will fall together. So thank you very much for this, and we appreciate it very much. And if you have not been to the museum, I invite you to come by, and we will share with you those terrible lessons which were learned by the Holocaust, and also a message of hope and how to make the world a better place. So thank you very much.
If you haven't been to the museum, please see us, and perhaps there might be room for you on our tour on December 10. We've been honored to take about 700 of our students through the museum in the last 9 to 10 years, and it's always a life-changing experience for all of us. So now, at this point in our presentation, Randy Spencer is going to come and present our Never Again shofar presentation, wherever Randy is.
של מדינת ישראל, אשר אושרה בקריאה ראשונה על ידי מועצת העם. בארץ ישראל קם העם היהודי, בה עוצבה דמותו הרוחנית, הדתית והמדינית, בה חי חיי קוממיות ממלכתית, בה יצר נכסי תרבות לאומיים וכלל אנושיים, והוריש לעולם כולו את ספר הספרים הנצחי. לאחר שהוגלה העם מארצו בכוח הזרוע, שמר לה אמונים בכל ארצות פזוריו, ולא חדל מתפילה ומתקווה לשוב לארצו ולחדש בתוכה את חירותו המדינית. מתוך קשר היסטורי ומסורתי זה,
Not really much to say after that, is it? Thank you, Randy, for your presentation. I wish we had a way of distributing that all over the world in necessary places. I'm going to ask my colleague Larry Steinfeld to come up and join me now, if he would. Larry's such a great blessing to us here at the Institute for Hebraic Christian Studies as he helps us coordinate our tours to the museum every year. Puts up with me and last-minute changes, keeps him on his toes. The Holocaust, no human words to describe such a horrible happening where 6 million Jews were systematically slaughtered by the Nazis simply because they were Jews. Hard for us to understand the enormity of 6 million human lives. Let me help you a little bit with a little geographic word picture. Consider every man, woman, and child in Wyoming, Alaska, Vermont, the District of Columbia, Delaware, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Rhode Island, and that's about 6 million people. Furthermore, about 5 million plus non-Jews were also murdered by the Nazis. Unfortunately, while all this was going on, there was very little protest from the nations and the supposed Christian world of Europe. But for those of us who are non-Jews here tonight, we say to our Jewish friends, never again. Never again will we stand idly by whenever and wherever there is anti-Semitism. Let's make it very clear this evening. Those of us who are non-Jews, who love the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have joined our destiny and ourselves to the Jewish people. Your people have become our people. Your God has become our God, and we will stand with you against every evil against you, as if it was against us as well, because in actuality it is. And so tonight we're going to light 12 candles, 6 for the 6 million Jewish people who perished, and 5 for the 5 million non-Jewish people who perish. And then we have one unity candle to symbolize our desire to stand together in these challenging days ahead. We are honored to have some of our dear, wonderful Jewish friends here this evening who've come to give us the honor of lighting candles with us, and some of our Christian friends have also joined with us to light candles together tonight. I'll make a little short statement about each candle, and then Larry will call out the names of the people who will then come to light candles. I noticed that Don and Marilyn Schlossberg have come, and at the right moment you guys will announce your name too. Did Gregory Solomon make it in? Is Gregory here? I don't know if Gregory is here or not. I don't see him. Okay. All right. Our candle lighting assistants who are going to help us, if you would please take your place. And as we light these candles, again, we're recognizing that this is not a time of fear and dismay at the evil things that we see on the news all the time, but this is a day of faith and hope, because Hashem, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Jewish people who you so well gave to those of us who are non-Jews, has a wonderful plan for your life, and it's a plan for good and not evil. So we can look past the darkness of the things that we see and know that when all the ashes are settled and all the dust is settled, we'll still be standing strong, overcoming those who would do harm against us. Now, this first candle we're going to light in honor of all the men who perished, the old and the sick who were immediately killed, and the young and healthy who were worked to death, as Philip talked about this evening, as well as those who were executed in the killing fields. And if you would respond, as it says in the program, on their behalf, we say,
I don't need that. Harold Goldstein. Okay. Harold Goldstein, Jewish Community, Houston. And Alice and Dr. Frank Lanza, IHCS, please.
We're so grateful for Harold and Alice and Dr. Lanza being here with us this evening. Thank you so much. Could we give a hand clap of appreciation for them this evening? Thank you, guys. We light the second candle in honor of all the women who perished. Think about this, ladies, the mothers who died with their children in their arms, those who risk all to bring new life into the camps, the mothers who had to choose the life of one child over another, or their own life over their child's life. On their behalf, we say,
Golda and Gil Baker, Houston Jewish Community, and Dr. Pastor Gladys and Ivan Seahorn, GPS Ministries, please.
Could we give them a hand clap of appreciation also, please? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. We light the third candle in honor of the 1.5 million. Say that number again. 1.5 million innocent children, brutally but purposefully murdered, their young lives taken from them before they ever had a chance to live them. On their behalf, we say,
with pleasure, Leah Weems and my wife, Ruth Steinfeld, Houston Council of Jewish Holocaust Survivors, please. And Jan and Paul and Elizabeth and Alexandra Knudsen, IHCS. Thank you.
Could we give them a hand clap of appreciation? Thank you, guys. We light the fourth candle in honor of the heroes of resistance who bravely fought the Nazis against all odds. Although they knew they were doomed to perish in their struggle, they fought on the side of righteousness and gave many hope that evil could be resisted. On their behalf, we say, and I don't know if Gregory made it in. Gregory, if you're here, you can come join us.
Leah Mukasey, Houston Jewish Community, and Pam and Gerald Cox, IHCS, please.
Pam and Gerald represent our community in Brenham, and we're excited about the work that we're doing up there to bring this kind of mindset to the people in Brenham while they're making that ice cream. They can be thinking about more important issues as well. Thank you, Leon and Gerald and Pam. We light the fifth candle in honor of the righteous Gentiles who risked their lives and the lives of their families to save Jewish lives. And by their deeds, their mitzvot, prove that their faith was genuine. On their behalf, we say,
Al Marks and Carla and Steve Applegate, IHCS, please.
And also Don and Marilyn have come, so you guys come up too and join with Al. Don and Marilyn are from the Woodlands Jewish community, and you would join with Al here. We appreciate you getting here through all that bad weather. Al, would you come over here with Don and Marilyn? Al, you come over here with Don and Marilyn, if you would, please. Thank you. Many of you remember Al shared his story several years ago, as well as many of you here tonight who are survivors have shared your story with us. Thank you so much. We light the sixth of the candles for the Jewish people in honor of the Jewish survivors who lived through the nightmare and began a new life, as many of you are here tonight. Those who found the courage to share their pain, and those not able to bear witness because the memories have been just too painful. But on your behalf, we say,
Peter Berkowitz, Chairman of the Board of Holocaust Museum Houston, and Gay and Pastor Jim Bray, Remnant Church, IHCS, Lake Jackson. Thank you.
We're also excited to have a work down in Lake Jackson, where we're sharing with the folks in that community the importance of Jews and Christians coming together in these difficult times. So thank you, Peter and Gay and Pastor Jim Way. Thank you. And we have this unity candle to symbolize our desire for Jews and righteous Gentiles to stand with one another for the cause of justice, to fight anti-Semitism whenever and wherever it is found.
Marvin Waskow, Houston Jewish Community, and Dr. Richard Booker, founder, director of IHCS. Thank you.
Thank all of you who came to participate in the candle lighting this evening. We appreciate you so much. This concludes the candle lighting part of our service, and we're so honored that our dear friend Bubba Silberstein has come to lead us in Kaddish this evening. And as Bubba comes, I want to ask you if you would all please stand with me. The Kaddish is in your program, both in Hebrew and in English. And we know Bubba is an expert in Hebrew. But if you know the Hebrew, please join with Bubba as he leads us. And we're going to ask him also to say the English for those of us who may not quite have it down quite as well. But I was honored when I was at Ulpan in Netanya this past January. Many of you know that the Passover bombing at the Park Hotel in Netanya, 5 or 6 years ago now, I can't remember how many years ago, but I was able to go to that very banquet room and say Kaddish at that very banquet hall room at the Park Hotel in Netanya. And also there's a mall there that's had several suicide bombings, and I was able to go and stand at the entranceway into the mall and say Kaddish for those who perished there. And so we're honored to have Bubba lead us this evening.
Thank you. Yitgadal v'yitgadas shemei rabam b'yomad ivrachi rutei v'yamlik malchutei V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agalav izman kariv imru amen. Ye'esh mei rabba mevarach li'alam ome'amaya. T'bak yispoar v'yisromam v'yisnasei v'yishadar v'yishale v'yishalal shemei d'kudashah barichu le'ela minka b'chata v'shirata shishbechata v'nechemata Dami ran bi'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya v'chayim oleinu v'alko Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'imromav huya say shalom oleinu v'alko Yisrael v'imru amen. The translation is also in your program. It's 3 paragraphs if you'd like to read with me. May his great name grow exalted and sanctified in the world that he created as he willed. May he give reign to his kinship in your lifetimes and in your days and in the lifetimes of the entire family of Israel, swiftly and soon. Amen. Blessed, praised, glorified, exalted, extolled, might, appraised, and lauded by the name of the Holy One. Blessing is he beyond any blessing in song. Praise and consolation that are uttered in the world. Amen. May there be an abundant peace from heaven and life upon us and upon all Israel. Amen. He who makes peace in his heights may make peace upon us and upon all Israel. Amen. Ahosei shalom bimromav, hu yasei shalom aleinu, v'alkohol Yisroel, v'imru, v'imru, amen. Yasei shalom, shalom aleinu, v'alkohol Yisroel, yasei shalom, shalom aleinu, v'alkohol Yisroel.
Thank you so much. Would you take a seat for just a few more moments, please? We're almost through with our evening, and miracles still happen. The Red Sea still parts, and we're right on time. Hallelujah, somebody said. Many Christians have not had the opportunity to study church history, and frankly, they're just not aware of the atrocities done to the Jewish people in the name of Christianity. We've had over 1,000 students in our classes here locally, and when they go through our history course, they're just shocked because they just have never had an opportunity to know about the history. And it's so important that they learn these things, and it makes a big difference in their lives when they realize how bad our history is on the Christian side. When Ezra and Daniel realized the corporate consequences of Israel's sins, they were wise enough to understand the need and to stand in the gap for the nation through prayer and repentance and intercession, even though they themselves did not personally commit the sins that grieved the Lord that's mentioned in the Scriptures. In the same way, tonight we have the same opportunity to stand in the gap for the past sins of the Christian church world, Christendom, and ask the Lord's forgiveness through the following prayer of repentance that's in your program. And those of you who are not Jewish, here tonight, I would ask you, would you please stand with me so we can say this prayer together if you're not Jewish. Our Jewish friends can look around and see how many good friends that you really do have. And so if you join with me now in this prayer, I recognize that for centuries the Christian church has been characterized by anti-Semitism manifested in doctrines and words that negatively stereotype Jewish people, plus deeds of violence and murder against Jews. While not personally responsible for the past, as a Christian, I recognize my connection to the historic church and that we still suffer the consequences of its doctrines and deeds. Like Ezra and Daniel, who repented on behalf of their people, I acknowledge, confess, and renounce the individual and corporate sins of the Christian church, and for myself any sins of Judophobia, the fear of Jews and things Jewish, anti-Semitism, attempts to stereotype, dehumanize, debase, belittle, and destroy the Jewish people, silence and absence of protest against others who abuse the Jewish people. I confess the sins of our governmental leaders when they do not stand on the Lord's side concerning his divine purposes and will for the Jewish people, and their biblical and historical rights to live in peace in the land given to them by the Almighty. I ask the Lord's forgiveness for any of these sins in my own life, and I commit myself to stand with the international Jewish community against any individual or corporate threat. I confess my identity with the Jewish community, and because of my faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. With help from the Almighty, I desire to bless and comfort the Lord's chosen people. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live. Amen. Can you say amen real loud? All right. Thank you so much. Would you take a seat, please? Thank you. I really appreciate that. Now we're coming to the end of our program this evening. We have a special treat. Our IHCS staff singer of Hatikva just got out of the hospital with foot surgery, but that was not going to deter her from being here tonight. Jody Haas is going to lead us in singing Hatikva. Among Jody's many credentials, she has sung with the Houston Symphony Chorus, was a member and soloist of the Houston Chamber Choir for 3 years. Jody had an opportunity to visit Israel in 1987, and there she sang with the Jerusalem Symphony as a choir member. And Jody says this was an experience that she will never forget. And so she is going to come now, and Kay Fisher is going to come and accompany her. So could we all stand for the singing of Hatikva? Thank you.
I'd like to say, too, that I had the privilege of visiting the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, and that is certainly an experience that I will never, ever forget. That makes me emotional. Sorry.